Catherine Norris looked out the viewport as the transport ship approached Nexus 7. The planet glowed blue and green against the blackness of space. She watched as they descended through puffy white clouds toward the human outpost below. Metal. Buildings gleamed in the alien sunlight. This far from Earth, humanity was just getting a foothold. Catherine checked her reflection in the polished surface of her tablet. Her brown hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her blue eyes looked tired after the long journey. She straightened her gray diplomat uniform and took a deep breath. No one here knew who she really was. To them, she was just another government representative. Not the wife of Chuck Norris, not one of Earth's top martial artists. The ship landed with a gentle bump. Catherine grabbed her small bag and walked to the exit. The door slid open with a hiss. Hot, strange-smelling air rushed in. She stepped onto the metal platform and squinted in the bright sunlight of Nexus 7. A short, nervous-looking man hurried toward her. He had thinning hair and wore a rumpled uniform with the Earth Alliance patch. "Mrs. Norris, I'm Frank Moore, human ambassador to Nexus 7. Welcome to our little outpost." He stuck out his hand, which shook slightly. Catherine shook it firmly. "Thank you, Ambassador. Please call me Catherine." Frank looked around nervously. "Let's get you inside," and briefed quickly. "Things are tense right now." They walked across the landing pad toward a large metal building. Human staff members hurried about, looking busy and worried. Catherine noticed a group of tall, blue-skinned aliens watching from a distance. Each had 4 arms and stood at least 7 feet tall. Their bodies looked powerful even under their loose clothing. "The Viridians," Frank whispered, following her gaze. "They've ruled this sector for thousands of years. We're here on their permission, and they remind us of that daily." Inside the main building, Frank led Catherine to a small office. The walls were bare metal. A simple desk and 2 chairs were the only furniture. Frank closed the door and checked. A device in his pocket. No listening devices. Good. He sat down heavily. "Mrs. Norris, Catherine, I need to be straight with you. Your mission is much more complicated than you were told on Earth." Catherine sat down across from him. "I gathered that. Tell me what's really going on." Frank ran a hand through his thin hair. "The Viridians are warriors. Their whole culture is built around fighting and combat skills. They've allowed us to build this outpost for trade, but they don't respect us. They think humans are weak. And that's a problem because they only make alliances with species they respect. And right now, Earth needs that alliance. Badly. The Drax Empire is expanding on our other border. Without the Viridians as allies, Earth could be caught in the middle of a galactic war." Catherine nodded slowly. "And my real mission?" Frank looked embarrassed. "Your background is classified. The Viridians think you're just another diplomat, but Earth Command hopes you can impress them somehow. Show them humans aren't as weak as they think." Catherine almost smiled. This wasn't the first time her skills had been used for something beyond simple fighting. Chuck would find this amusing when she told him later. "What have you tried so far?" she asked. Frank sighed. "We sent athletes, soldiers, even our best hand-to-hand combat experts. The Viridians beat them all easily. Their fighting style, they call it Carvash, is unlike anything we've seen. And with 4 arms and their strength," he shook his head. Catherine stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, she could see more of the blue aliens walking between buildings. They moved with natural grace and power. "Tell me more about them," she said. "They developed on a high-gravity world, physically stronger than humans by a factor of 3. Their 4 arms give them advantages in their fighting style. They've been perfecting Carvash for over 10,000 years. Every Viridian trains in it from childhood." Catherine watched as 2 Viridians demonstrated some moves in an open area. Their 4 arms moved in perfect harmony, striking and blocking, faster than most humans could follow. "Have you seen their training?" she asked. "Yes. They have a huge training hall in their compound. It's amazing and scary at the same time." "And have they invited me there?" Frank nodded. "Tomorrow morning. It's standard for new diplomats. They like to, show off. Remind us of our place." Catherine turned back to him. "Tell me about their leadership." Grandmaster Zorvak is their head instructor and advisor to their emperor. He's the highest-ranked Karvash practitioner in this sector. Black uniform, silver, face markings. You can't miss him. And what happens if I somehow impress them? Frank laughed without humor. That would be a first. But maybe they'd finally agree to real alliance talks instead of treating us like children. A soft beep came from Frank's pocket. He checked his device and frowned. The Viridian delegation wants to meet you at dinner tonight, earlier than planned. He looked up worriedly. Just be respectful, don't mention your background, and whatever happens, don't accept any challenges. Challenges? Sometimes they invite visitors to try Karvash. It never ends well. A diplomat from Europa Station accepted last month. He's still in medical with broken bones. Catherine nodded seriously, but inside she felt a familiar calm. The calm that came before a storm. The calm Chuck had taught her to cultivate. I understand, she said. I'll be careful. Frank looked relieved. Good. I'll show you to your quarters so you can rest before dinner. As they walked through the corridors, Catherine noticed more Viridians watching her. Their four-armed salutes seemed slightly mocking. One said something in their language that made the others laugh, a sound like grinding stones. In her small room, Catherine unpacked her few belongings. She placed a photo of Chuck on the nightstand and smiled at it. If only these aliens knew who her teacher had been all these years, who she trained with daily, what she was capable of. She changed into a fresh uniform and did a series of stretches to work out the stiffness from the long space journey. Then she sat cross-legged on the floor and closed her eyes. She began the breathing exercises Chuck had taught her, preparing her mind and body for whatever would come. Catherine knew that tomorrow would be important, not just for her, but possibly for the future of Earth. These Viridians needed to learn that humans should not be underestimated. As she meditated, Catherine smiled slightly. Sometimes the most important battles began with being underestimated. Dinner with the Viridians was tense. Catherine sat at a long metal table in the main hall of the human outpost. The chairs on one side were normal size. The chairs on the other side were much bigger, made for the 7-foot-tall aliens. 5 Viridians sat across from the human delegation. Their blue skin looked darker in the dim light. Their forearms rested on the table or on their laps. They wore formal uniforms with strange symbols that probably showed their rank. The one in the middle wore a black uniform with silver marks on his face. Catherine knew this must be Grandmaster Zorvak. His yellow eyes studied her with interest. Frank Moore sat next to Catherine. He kept wiping sweat from his forehead with a small cloth. 3 other human diplomats completed their side of the table. They all looked nervous. So, Zorvak said in a deep voice, "You are the new human diplomat." His words were perfect English but had a strange buzzing quality. "Yes," Catherine said. "I'm Catherine Norris. Thank you for meeting with me." The Viridian to Zorvak's right made a sound like rocks falling. Catherine realized it was a laugh. "Another talker," he said. "Humans are always good with words, not so good with actions." Frank cleared his throat. "Master Kelnor, Catherine is here to help strengthen relations between our peoples." Kelnor had a younger look than the others. His uniform was dark blue with red trim. His 4 hands moved constantly, tapping on the table. "Relations?" Kelnor said. "What do the weak have to offer the strong? Your species can barely survive on your own planet." Catherine sipped her water calmly. She had dealt with bullies before. These aliens were just bigger, blue bullies with extra arms. "Every species has strengths," she said. "Humans adapt quickly. We solve problems in new ways. We could help each other." Zorvak studied her. "You speak differently than the other humans. With more confidence." Catherine smiled politely. "I'm just doing my job, Grandmaster." "You will visit our training hall tomorrow," Zorvak said. "You will see true strength there." "I look forward to it," Catherine said. The dinner continued with stiff conversation. The food was bland, made to be edible for both species. Catherine ate little, knowing tomorrow would be important. She needed to be ready. Back in her room, Catherine changed into soft clothes. She moved through a series of exercises Chuck had taught her, slow, flowing movements that hid their deadly purpose. She had practiced these forms for 15 years with her husband. Now they were as natural as breathing. Catherine thought about Chuck back on Earth. He would tell her to stay calm, to observe before acting, to find the weakness that every opponent had. She slept well that night, years of training giving her the ability to rest even before important events. Morning came quickly on Nexus 7. The planet's sun was brighter than Earth's, making the light that came through her small window almost harsh. Catherine dressed in loose black pants and a simple gray top. Clothes she could move in if needed. Frank met her in the corridor. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. "Remember," he said as they walked toward the Viridian compound. "Just observe. Don't comment too much. And definitely don't agree to any demonstrations." Catherine nodded. "I understand." The Viridian training hall was huge. The ceiling rose at least 40 feet high. The floor was shiny black stone, polished smooth. The walls held weapons of all kinds, many with extra handles for their forearms. About 30 Viridians were already training when Catherine and Frank entered. They moved in perfect patterns across the floor, their forearms struck at invisible enemies. Some trained in pairs, attacking and blocking faster than most humans could follow. Zorvak approached them, his black uniform making him look like a shadow against the bright lights. "Welcome to the heart of Viridian culture," he said. "Our training hall has stood for 300 years. The floor is made from the sacred black stone of our home world." Catherine bowed slightly. "Thank you for allowing me to visit." Zorvak gestured to the training Viridians. "Observe. This is power that has been developed over thousands of years." Catherine watched carefully. The aliens were impressive, fast, strong, and with 4 arms that could attack from unexpected angles. But as she studied their movements, she began to see patterns. Their techniques relied on their extra limbs and superior strength. There was a beauty to it, but also a weakness. They assumed all opponents would be slower and weaker. Kelnor walked over, his body still moving from his practice. "What, do you think human?" he asked. "Impressed?" "Your techniques are very advanced," Catherine said truthfully. "Advanced?" Kelnor laughed. "They are beyond human understanding. Your kind could never master even the basic forms." Catherine said nothing. She just continued watching the training. "Perhaps," Kelnor said with a smirk, "you would like to try?" Frank stepped forward quickly. "Catherine is a diplomat, not a fighter." Kelnor's 4 arms crossed over his chest. "Of course, humans talk, Viridians do." Something in his tone reminded Catherine of bullies she had faced years ago. Before she met Chuck. Before she learned to stand up for herself. What would trying involve? She asked calmly. Frank looked at her with wide eyes. "Catherine, no," he whispered. "Simple forms," Zorvak said, watching her with new interest. "Basic movements to understand our way." Catherine thought for a moment. This could be the opportunity Earth needed, or it could be a disaster. "I would be honored to learn a basic form," she said. The training area went quiet as other Viridians stopped to watch. Kelnor led Catherine to an open space on the black floor. "Stand here," he said. "Try to copy my movements." He began a simple pattern, simple for a Viridian. His 4 arms moved in a flowing sequence. For most humans, it would be impossible to follow. But Catherine was not most humans. She watched once, then began to mirror his movements. Her 2 arms couldn't do exactly what his 4 did, but she adapted, finding the core of the technique. Kelnor looked surprised. "Again," he said, moving faster. Catherine matched him, move for move, her body flowing through the pattern with grace. A murmur went through the watching Viridians. Kelnor's face showed confusion. "You have trained in fighting?" he asked. "I have." "Some basic knowledge," Catherine said. Zorvak stepped forward. "Interesting. Perhaps tomorrow you would return for a more complete demonstration." Frank looked like he might faint. Catherine smiled politely. "I would be happy to return," she said. As they left the training hall, Frank grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "They're setting you up. Tomorrow. They'll challenge you to actual combat." Catherine patted his hand. "Maybe that's exactly what we need." "Need? We need you in one piece. Not broken by a Viridian master." They walked back to the human compound in the bright alien sunlight. Catherine looked calm. "Trust me, Frank," she said. "Sometimes the only way to earn respect is to face a challenge directly." Frank shook his head. "I need to report this to Earth Command. Tell them I'm doing my job," Catherine said. That night, Catherine prepared herself. She knew tomorrow would bring a real test. She moved through her most advanced exercises, the ones Chuck had taught her for facing larger, stronger opponents. She was ready. The Viridians were about to learn that humans, especially ones trained by Chuck Norris, should never be underestimated. Morning came too quickly for Frank Moore. He had been up most of the night sending worried messages to Earth Command. No reply had come yet. The communication delay to Earth meant he would have to handle this situation alone. Catherine, on the other hand, had slept well. She woke before the alarm, did her morning exercises, and ate a light breakfast. When Frank came to her quarters, she was ready in a simple white outfit similar to a karate gi. It wasn't exactly like her normal training clothes, but the outpost supplies had limited options. Frank looked at her outfit and frowned. "You're really going through with this?" "Of course," Catherine said calmly. "We need to earn their respect. Not at the cost of your safety. These aliens are 3 times stronger than humans, and they have 4 arms." Catherine checked her belt, making sure it was tied correctly. "Frank, do you know who my husband is?" Frank blinked in confusion. "Chuck Norris. It's in your file. Some kind of Earth celebrity, right?" Catherine smiled. Many people in the outer colonies had little knowledge of Earth culture. He's a martial arts master, one of the best, and he's been my teacher for 15 years. "Oh." Frank looked slightly relieved, then shook his head. "But still, no human can match Viridian strength." "Sometimes strength isn't everything," Catherine said. "Now shall we go?" The training hall was packed when they arrived. Word had spread about the human female who could perform Viridian forms. Many high-ranking Viridians stood along the walls. Catherine recognized some from the dinner. Others wore elaborate uniforms she hadn't seen before. Zorvak met them at the entrance. His yellow eyes studied Catherine's white outfit. "You come dressed as a fighter," he said. Catherine bowed slightly. "I come dressed with respect for your training hall." This seemed to please him. He led them to the center of the black stone floor. The watching Viridians parted to make a path. Kelnor waited in the center. He wore a formal blue training uniform with a black belt. 4 black armbands circled his upper arms, marking his rank. "Today we will see what the human truly knows," he announced loudly. The watching crowd made that strange grinding stone sound that passed for Viridian laughter. Catherine stepped forward calmly. Frank stayed back, looking pale. "We will begin with advanced forms," Kelnor said. "Follow if you can." He started a complex sequence of movements. His forearms created patterns in the air that flowed like water but struck like lightning. This was no beginner form. It was a master-level sequence designed to show his superiority. Catherine watched carefully, noting how his weight shifted. She saw the core principles behind the flashy four-armed techniques. When he finished, there was silence in the hall. Catherine stepped to the center and began. Her 2 arms couldn't match his 4 exactly, but she had studied his movements. She adapted the form, capturing its essence while making it work for her human body. Where Kelnor used his lower arms for certain moves, she used subtle shifts in her stance. Where he created force with his extra limbs, she generated it through perfect body mechanics. When she finished, the silence in the hall was different. It was the silence of surprise. Kelnor's face showed a mix of emotions. "You have had training," he said, his voice less mocking now. "Some," Catherine admitted. "Let us try something more challenging," Kelnor said. For the next 20 minutes, he demonstrated increasingly difficult forms. Each time, Catherine watched and then performed her adapted version. She moved with grace and precision that no Viridian had seen from a human before. The watching crowd was no longer making mocking sounds. They were studying her with serious attention. Finally, Zorvak stepped forward. Enough forms. Forms are just patterns. Real Karvash happens in combat. Frank stepped forward, his diplomatic training overcoming his fear. Grandmaster, Catherine came here as a cultural observer, not a fighter. Zorvak's yellow eyes fixed on Catherine. Is this true? Do you only wish to perform empty movements without understanding their purpose? Catherine met his gaze steadily. I respect the combat traditions of the Viridians. I would be honored to learn more. Catherine, Frank hissed. It is decided, Zorvak announced. Kel Nor will demonstrate real Karvash with the human. Kel Nor smiled, showing teeth that looked almost metallic. I will be gentle. No permanent damage. The crowd moved back, creating a large circle on the black stone floor. Catherine took a position on one side. Kel Nor stood opposite her, his forearms loose at his sides. Frank stood frozen at the edge of the circle. He couldn't believe what was happening. First contact situations were supposed to be careful, diplomatic, not whatever this was about to become. This will be a demonstration only, Zorvak said. Fighting will stop at my command or when one participant submits. Catherine nodded her understanding. She settled into a relaxed stance that Chuck had taught her years ago. It looked almost casual, but she was perfectly balanced. Begin, Zorvak commanded. Kel Nor moved instantly. His upper right arm struck toward Catherine's head while his lower arms prepared to grapple. It was a standard opening move, meant to overwhelm an opponent with multiple threats at once. But Catherine wasn't there. She had shifted slightly, causing his strike to miss by a hair's width. Before he could reset, she moved again, just enough to make his follow-up strike hit empty air. The watching Viridians murmured. Kel Nor hadn't landed a single touch yet. Frustrated, he launched a more aggressive attack. All four arms moved in, complex patterns designed to leave no escape route. Catherine slipped between the strikes, moving with a fluid grace that made it look easy. She wasn't attacking yet. She was studying, learning his patterns and timing. Fight back, Kel Nor demanded. Catherine smiled slightly. As you wish. The next time he attacked, she didn't just avoid the strike. She redirected it, using his own momentum to pull him slightly off balance. It wasn't enough to take him down, just enough to show she could. Kel Nor's yellow eyes widened in surprise. He attacked again, using a powerful combination that had won him many matches. Catherine's response was a perfect counter that used his own energy against him. He stumbled forward, barely catching himself. The hall was completely silent now. Even Zorvak leaned forward, his face intense with concentration. How? Kel Nor asked, circling her cautiously. How does a human move like this? Good training, Catherine said simply. No human trainer could teach this. Catherine thought of Chuck and smiled. If only they knew. Angry now, Kel Nor attacked with all his skill. His forearms became a blur of motion. Catherine met the attack with perfect defensive techniques, slipping past his guard and touching pressure points that Chuck had theorized would affect Viridian nervous systems. Kel Nor's lower left arm suddenly went numb. He stared at it in shock. What did you do? He demanded. Applied pressure to a nerve cluster, Catherine explained. It's temporary. The watching Viridians were completely still. No one had ever seen a Viridian master touched in combat by a human, let alone partially disabled. Kel Nor attacked again, trying to use his remaining 3 good arms to overpower her. Catherine moved like water around his strikes, touching another pressure point. His upper right arm dropped to his side. For the first time, there was fear in Kel Nor's eyes. He had 2 arms left against her 2, and suddenly he was not confident anymore. Frank watched with his mouth open. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A human, even a well-trained one, should not be able to match a Viridian master. Yet Catherine was not just matching Kel Nor. She was controlling the fight. The final exchange happened so fast that many watchers missed it. Kelnor committed to a powerful strike. Catherine sidestepped, swept his legs, and took him to the floor with a perfectly executed throw. Before he could rise, she applied a specialized joint lock that immobilized his remaining good arms. "Do you yield?" she asked quietly. Kelnor struggled for a moment, then stopped. "I yield," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. Catherine immediately released him and helped him to his feet. She bowed with respect. The entire combat had lasted exactly 14 seconds. The training hall remained silent. No one moved. The Viridian stared at Catherine and Kelnor with wide yellow eyes. Frank stood frozen at the edge of the circle, unable to believe what he had just seen. Zorvak was the first to break the silence. He stepped into the circle, his black uniform making a soft swishing sound on the stone floor. 14 seconds, he said, his deep voice echoing in the quiet hall. In 14 seconds, you have changed everything we thought we knew about humans. Catherine bowed to him respectfully. I meant no disrespect to Master Kelnor or to Karvash. Kelnor was flexing his arms as feeling returned to them. His face showed confusion rather than anger. How did you do this? No human has ever defeated a fourth circle master. My husband taught me, Catherine said simply. This husband, Zorvak said. He must be a great warrior among your people. Catherine smiled. He is. His name? Chuck Norris. The name meant nothing to the Viridians, but they said it carefully, as if memorizing it. I must report this to the Emperor, Zorvak said. This changes our understanding of human capabilities. He turned to Frank. Ambassador Moore, we will meet to discuss new terms for our alliance tomorrow. Frank was still staring at Catherine in shock. New terms? Yes, the terms between equals, not between strong and weak as we had thought. Zorvak bowed deeply to Catherine, a gesture never before given to a human. We will speak again soon, Catherine Norris, student of Chuck Norris. The Viridians filed out of the training hall, talking among themselves in their own language. Many looked back at Catherine with new respect in their eyes. Kelnor was the last to leave. He stopped at the door and gave Catherine a warrior's salute, with all four arms. When they were alone, Frank grabbed Catherine's shoulders. What just happened? How did you do that? Catherine shrugged. I told you, I've trained with Chuck for 15 years. But they're aliens. They're stronger, faster, have four arms. Strength and speed aren't everything, Catherine said. Technique and timing matter more. Chuck always says that. Do you realize what you've done? Frank was pacing now, running his hands through his thinning hair. You've completely changed our diplomatic position. Earth Command won't believe this. Isn't that what they sent me here to do? Catherine asked. To earn the Viridians' respect? Yes, but... Frank gestured wildly. No one expected you to actually do it, especially not by defeating one of their masters in combat. Catherine laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound that echoed in the empty training hall. Maybe that's why I was the right person to send. Back at the human compound, news of what happened spread quickly. The other diplomats and staff looked at Catherine with awe as she walked through the corridors. Some even asked for her autograph, which she found amusing. In her quarters, Catherine sent a private message to Chuck back on Earth. The message would take days to reach him, but she knew he would be proud. Mission accomplished, she wrote. 14 seconds was all it took. Your pressure point theory about four-armed species was correct. I love you and miss you. See you soon. That evening, Catherine was invited to dine with the Viridian High Command, an honor never before extended to a human. She wore her diplomat uniform and went alone. Frank was busy sending frantic reports to Earth Command and preparing for the alliance negotiations. The Viridian dining hall was massive, with high ceilings and walls decorated with ancient weapons. Catherine was given a seat of honor next to Zorvak. Kelnor sat across from her, his yellow eyes studying her with newfound respect. Tell us of this fighting style you use, Zorvak said as they ate foods from both Earth and the Viridian home world. It is not like any human combat we have observed before, It's a hybrid style, Catherine explained. Chuck, my husband, studied many earth martial arts, then developed his own approach. He adapts techniques to work against different opponents. Even four-armed opponents? Kelnor asked. Catherine smiled. Chuck believes in being prepared for anything. And he taught you all of this? Another Viridian asked. Do many humans learn such skills? Some, Catherine said, but it takes years of dedicated practice. Just as Karvash does. Zorvak nodded. Perhaps our ways are not so different after all. The conversation continued, more relaxed than any previous meeting between humans and Viridians. The aliens asked sincere questions about Earth and human capabilities. Catherine answered honestly, helping them understand that while humans might not match Viridian physical strength, they had other kinds of strength. After dinner, Zorvak took Catherine to a small room filled with holographic displays. He activated one showing a swirling galaxy map. The Drax Empire expands here, he said, pointing to a red area spreading across one side of the galaxy. They threaten both our peoples. Catherine studied the map. Is that why Earth Command is so eager for an alliance? Yes. Alone, your colonies here and here would be vulnerable. He pointed to small blue dots near the edge of the red area. We thought you too weak to be useful allies. Now we think differently. Because I defeated Kelnor, Zorvak's four arms, made a complex gesture. Not just that, it was how you did it. You adapted. You used our strength against us. You found weaknesses we did not know we had. He looked at her with his intense yellow eyes. These are valuable traits in war. I hope we can avoid war, Catherine said. As do we. But if it comes, the Drax should face a united front. Zorvak turned off the display. Tomorrow we begin real alliance talks. Tonight, rest well, Catherine Norris. As she walked back to the human compound under Nexus 7's 3 moons, Catherine felt satisfied. Her mission had succeeded better than anyone had expected. A real alliance between humans and Viridians would change the balance of power in this sector of space. All because of 14 seconds of combat. In her room, she found a message waiting. Frank had finally heard back from Earth Command. She opened it and read, Ambassador Moore reports incredible development. Catherine Norris has defeated Viridian Master in ritual combat. Viridians now willing to negotiate full military alliance. Standing diplomatic protocols superseded. Norris now lead negotiator with full authority. Moore to provide support. Congratulations on unprecedented breakthrough. Catherine smiled. Chuck had always told her that actions speak louder than words. It seemed that was true even across the galaxy. 3 weeks passed quickly on Nexus 7. Catherine spent her days in meetings with the Viridian High Command. The alliance talks moved faster than anyone had expected. Where there had once been suspicion and mockery, there was now respect and genuine interest. Frank Moore watched with amazement as Catherine handled the negotiations with the same calm skill she had shown in combat. The Viridians responded well to her direct approach. Your fighting skills are impressive, Frank said one evening, as they reviewed the day's progress. But I never expected you to be such a good diplomat. Catherine smiled. Chuck always says that understanding your opponent is the key to success, whether in fighting or in life. You mentioned him a lot, Frank observed. He must be quite a man. He is, Catherine said simply. On the final day of negotiations, a new ship arrived at Nexus 7. It was larger than the usual transport vessels, bearing the Earth Alliance insignia. Catherine was called to the landing pad by an excited message from Frank. When she arrived, Frank was bouncing on his toes with nervous energy. Earth Command sent a special envoy to sign the final treaty, he explained. This is huge, Catherine. They've never sent someone this high-ranking to the outer colonies before. Catherine nodded, watching as the ship's ramp lowered. They understand how important this alliance is. All thanks to you and your 14 seconds of combat, Frank said with a shake of his head. I still can't believe it. A tall figure appeared at the top of the ramp. As he walked down, Catherine's face broke into a wide smile. Chuck, she called, running forward. Chuck Norris, dressed in an Earth Alliance uniform with Special Envoy badges, grinned as he wrapped his arms around his wife. "Surprise," he said. Frank stared open-mouthed. That's your husband? The Special Envoy is your husband?" Chuck extended his hand to Frank. "Chuck Norris. Earth Command thought it would make a strong impression if I came personally to sign the treaty." He smiled at Catherine, "especially after hearing about my wife's amazing work." Frank shook his hand weakly. "But you're the Chuck Norris? The martial arts legend?" "That's what they tell me," Chuck said with a modest shrug. News of Chuck's arrival spread quickly through both the human compound and the Viridian headquarters. By afternoon, a special meeting was arranged in the Viridian Council chamber. The chamber was grand, with high ceilings and ancient symbols carved into the walls. The Viridian leaders sat in a semicircle on one side, with Zorvak in the center. The human delegation sat opposite them, with Chuck and Catherine in the places of honor. "So," Zorvak said, his yellow eyes fixed on Chuck, "you are the teacher of Catherine Norris." Chuck nodded. "And she is one of my best students." Kel Nor, who had fully recovered from his defeat, leaned forward. "She said you developed techniques specifically for fighting four-armed opponents. How is this possible when you had never met our kind?" Chuck smiled. "I believe in being prepared for anything. Long ago, I started creating techniques that would work against different body types, extra limbs, even opponents with tails, just in case." The Viridians looked at each other, impressed by this level of preparation. "We have reviewed the treaty terms," Zorvak said, changing the subject. "They are acceptable. Our forces will begin joint training with yours immediately to prepare for any Drax aggression." Chuck nodded. "Earth Command is sending instructors to teach human fighting techniques to interested Viridian warriors, and we hope some of your masters might teach Karvash to our special forces." "A true exchange," Zorvak agreed. "As equals." The treaty was signed with formal ceremony. As the officials completed the paperwork, Kel Nor approached Chuck and Catherine. "I would be honored," he said with a bow, "if you would show me some of your techniques before you leave Nexus 7. Chuck looked at Catherine, who nodded. "We'd be happy to," she said. The next morning they met in the training hall. Word had spread and many Viridians came to watch. Chuck and Catherine stood in the center of the black stone floor, dressed in matching white jez. "First," Chuck said, "we'll demonstrate some of the principles that allow a smaller opponent to defeat a larger one." For the next hour, Chuck and Catherine showed techniques specifically designed to work against stronger opponents with extra limbs. The watching Viridians were fascinated, asking questions, and even volunteering to try some of the moves. Kel Nor proved to be an eager student. "Your approach is different from Karvash," he said. "We rely on our natural advantages. You find ways to overcome disadvantages. Both have value." By the end of the session, humans and Viridians were training together across the hall. Laughter, both human and the grinding stone sound of Viridians, filled the air. "This," Chuck said, quietly to Catherine, "is how peace really happens, one person at a time." That evening, a farewell feast was held. Humans and Viridians sat mixed together rather than on opposite sides of the table. Stories were shared and plans made for future exchanges. As the feast wound down, Zorvak rose to his feet, raising a ceremonial cup. "To Catherine Norris," he said, "who in 14 seconds changed the course of our two people's history." Everyone raised their cups. Catherine felt a warm glow of accomplishment. Later, as she and Chuck prepared to board the ship that would take them back to Earth, Frank approached them one last time. "I still can't believe all this happened because of one short fight," he said, shaking his head. "Sometimes," Chuck said, "all it takes is one moment to change everything, the right person at the right time, doing the right thing." Catherine took Chuck's hand. "I was just applying what you taught me." "And you did it perfectly," Chuck said with pride. As their ship lifted off from Nexus 7, Catherine looked down at the planet below. Human and Viridian buildings now stood side by side, no longer separated. Training sessions were scheduled for the next 6 months. Military strategies were being coordinated, all because of 14 seconds. "So," Chuck said as they settled in for the long journey home, "tell me everything. How did you know which pressure points would work on their nervous system?" Catherine smiled. "I remembered that diagram you showed me years ago, the one about theoretical alien physiology. When I saw how they moved, I could guess where the nerve clusters might be." Chuck laughed. "You always were my best student." "Think the Dracs know what they're in for?" Catherine asked, looking at the stars outside their viewport. "They have no idea," Chuck said. "Humans are always underestimated out here. But that's our secret weapon, isn't it?" Catherine nodded. Throughout human history, from Earth to the stars, being underestimated had often been the key to victory. And now, with the Viridians as allies, the galaxy was about to learn just what humans, and especially humans trained by Chuck Norris, were capable of. In later years, as the Human-Viridian Alliance became the cornerstone of peace in that sector of space, the story was told again and again. The story of Catherine Norris and the 14 seconds that changed everything. And when asked why they allied so completely with the physically smaller humans, Viridian commanders would simply reply, "We met Chuck Norris's wife.